This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Welcome back once again, everyone. In this video, we're going to do some viewer mail. And real quick, if you're new to this channel and you don't know what this segment is all about, allow me to explain. So a long time ago, when I left my day job to do this YouTube channel, so this was back in 2014, so 11 years ago, one day I got this book in the mail from a gentleman named David Brookover, and it was this incredible landscape book called The Road. David's an amazing photographer. And just because he'd sent it to me, I called him, I said, "This is incredible. Do you mind if I share this in a video?" And that was sort of how mail time kicked off. Speed forward 11 years. David and I are very good friends today. We do the Japan workshop together. He's an awesome guy, great photographer. But that's what kicked this off. And after I did his book on the channel, more people would start sending things in. And in the spirit of creativity, I wanted to celebrate this for two reasons. First of all, somebody went to the trouble to make something, and I think that right alone is awesome. Second of all, as a photographer, I can tell you from experience that there is a big difference between just being a dude with a camera to actually starting to think about your work, how it pairs together, how it categorizes itself together, and how that moves forward in a statement that you're trying to make as an artist. And so in honor of that, this is the little segment where we can take a break from like reviewing gear and stuff like that, and we can talk about work that people are doing that is pretty awesome. And I should also mention that to date, I have reviewed over 300 mail entries that have come in. So these include things like zines to full-blown books. And when I get something in the mail, we have a little book plate that we put in the front, and then we have a spreadsheet that we keep so we can kind of cross-reference which videos contained which books or which zines. And I think it's pretty cool. And then I archive everything. So we've got a room back here I'll show you a little B-roll of. We have an entire wall full of shelving with this stuff on it. And I've got all kinds of things. I have kept everything that everyone has sent. Also, I should note that we also have a backlog of mail over here that I try to separate up between newer things that come in, and then we get to the backlog also. So it's sort of a mixed bag of sorts. But this is something that's been very special to me and this channel, and I think it's important to recognize it when people do something cool. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to some mail today, because I've got some great things that I want to share with you guys. So first up is this very colorful little zine called Sugar Junkie. This comes to us from Colton, Matocha. It also, I should note, has Sour Patch Kids in the front, so thank you for sending that. Colton also includes a note in here, which I'll share with you. He says, "Dear Ted, enclosed you will find my first photography zine, Sugar Junkie. This zine has been several years in the making and focuses on candy as the subject as my still life series. While this series began as a one-off for me to better understand how my equipment captured color in the raw file, I found myself reconnecting with the joy I once had for photography. Your series of photography book reviews is an incredible value to the larger art community, and I would be honored if my little zine were to be included. Regardless, thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge. I've enjoyed your videos over the years, and the value from that is immeasurable. All the best, Colton." So Colton, this is fantastic. I think it's fun, it's colorful, it's different. It's a really cool way of taking something like the still life and interpreting it, and something that's very modern and very different. The one thing I want to point out in here, I think your zine is very well designed. It's very good. I like the way that you take certain images and you have kind of a reframing that goes on. I think with the kind of work you do with smaller things like this, it can become very pattern-esque, and I think this is something that works really well and kind of lifts the design of the whole zine upward. I wouldn't recommend something like that normally, I don't think, in photography projects, because it is kind of like taking the image sort of out of context, but I think in this sense it works really well, and I think you've done a fantastic job on this. You should be very proud. Thank you for the Sour Patch Kids and the zine. This is awesome. Okay, so now for a complete change of pace, I've got this wonderful book that comes to us from Peter Wendel. This is called The Suit is Sewn in the Silence, and Peter has a note which reads, "Dear Ted Forbes, I hope that this book, The Suit Sewn in Silence, can find an interesting corner on your YouTube channel. The book's theme is an exploration of life's transience, inspired by Thomas Transtromer's poem, Black Postcards. This book delves into the existential questions of time, death, and being, which is intertwined with images that can be perceived as both clear and enigmatic. My name is Peter Wendel, a photographer and artist interested in approaching my unconscious mind through the symbols I intuitively capture with my camera. By analyzing these symbols with my artistic process, I seek to understand and illuminate the existential aspects of life. I would like to thank you for the work you do on your channel, where you highlight exciting and thought-provoking photo books. Your insights and analysis create a platform that is appreciated by artists and photography enthusiasts worldwide. Since I believe we share a mutual interest in both art and the inner worlds of people, I am also taking the liberty of attaching the introductory text to my upcoming thesis for the HDK Valand Master of Fine Arts program of photography in Gothenburg, Sweden. Best regards, Peter." And this is the introductory text, which also relates to the back part of this book. Peter, This is very well done. You should be very proud of this. I think it's very well printed. I love the design on here. It is very existential, and I think it's very personal. I end up getting this journalistic feel from it, which you've labeled on the front, journal. But I really think this is well done. I love the aesthetic on here with the high contrast black and white images, and I love the fact that you kind of move back and forth between things that are more abstract, or where they're playing with the focus a little bit, or maybe the negative looks scratched, to things that are more hyper-realistic. I think this works really well. There's a really cool sense of nostalgia in here, and I think it's wide open for interpretation to the viewer. I think the pacing is really good here too, and I find it very interesting that you use kind of these abstract sketches on vellum that overlay with certain pages. This is really, I think it's very interesting. It's very well done. What's very cool is at the end of this, where you see the deconstruction of the boyhood picture here, where all of a sudden pieces start to disappear and it goes into the starry sky. So Peter, very cool. I will link up to Peter's work as well as everybody else that I'm featuring in this video in the show description below. So make sure you support your colleagues and check this out. This is really well done, man. Also, he mentions that deconstruction in the draft to the intro here, but I'm going to share this one little bit with you because I think it's really cool. If I am to bring the 10-year-old boy home, I need to approach my unconscious mind. The key to that door may lie in my ability to interpret the symbols in my images and then place them in the context with my unconscious. So I've got two more books that I want to share with you that are very different and very well done, both of them. But real quick, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor this week, who are the always awesome folks over at Squarespace. How easy is it to build an amazing website in a matter of minutes? Squarespace has you covered. It's dead simple. Head over to Squarespace, hit get started. You can start by selecting from an impressive collection of customizable templates, or you can do what I do, build your own. Something unique because, you're not like other websites. Give your site a name. Next, you can build your homepage. We'll start with a few preset layouts just to get us going. Want to sell products like books or prints? Well, you can feature those on your homepage. Create a few more sections if you want. Let's also give it a color palette. There's a whole bunch to choose from, and just get us started. We can change this all later. Next, let's select the typography choices. Welcome to your website. Everything is set up and it's all ready for you to customize. Squarespace is built on Fluid Engine, the next generation of website design. Select Edit, and Fluid Engine allows you to drag, place, and resize any element on the page. You can snap these to a grid, you can make them float on top of one another, you can freeform however you like. You can even preview and adjust how the site looks on either desktop or mobile. The layouts are independent. Of course, you'll want a portfolio for your work. Creating an image gallery is as easy as dropping a folder of images on your web browser. Once uploaded, you can drag to resort, customize the look, and Squarespace writes all of the code for you. Everything just works and it looks fabulous. Want to sell your own prints, books, or zines? Squarespace has the capabilities to not only set up your online store and collect payments, but they also give you all the tools that you're going to need to be successful. Managing shipping and payment options, manage your orders, and engage with your customers. They even give you the tax tools that you need to keep things organized and stay compliant. You should try Squarespace for yourself. It's absolutely free, no credit card required. Just go to squarespace.com/AOP, sign up for that free trial. If you decide Squarespace is right for you, I can save you an additional 10% on your order by using offer code AOP on checkout. That's right, the code is AOP. So stop procrastinating, go build your website today. And I want to give a special shout out and thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Okay, next up is this very whimsical and quirky little book called Kein Vergnügen, which translates to no fun or no pleasure. This comes to us from Carsten Müeller. Carsten also includes a note in here which reads, "Hello Ted, my name is Carsten, a photographer from Hamburg, Germany. I've been wanting to send you one of my photo books for a long time." The foreword of this book reads, "The Hamburg DOM, a place of joy, bright eyes, and fast-paced thrills. Kein Vergnügen was created as a counterpoint to a proposal in the Photo Club, a regular meeting of photographers in Hamburg's Deichterhallen, to photograph the Hamburg DOM. The Hamburg DOM is a large fun fair that takes place 3 times a year in the city center. I found the idea too overdone and didn't fancy taking the usual neon shots of a fun fair at dusk. I wanted to try something very different, so I went to the fairground on a rainy Saturday morning to show a different side of the event. The results of this excursion can be found in my book." The foreword reads, "The Hamburg DOM, a place of joy, bright eyes, and fast-paced thrills. A place where the colorful hustle and bustle and the melodies and rides resound deep into the night. But on this rainy Saturday morning, it shows us a completely different face. I have made it a routine to finish my photo projects, or photographic essays as I like to call them, with a self-made photo book. I designed the book completely myself. The photos, the selection, the arrangement of the images, the layout, the printing, the binding, and even the cover. Everything is created in my craft room. Okay, so Carsten, I think this is fantastic. I love the fact that you've done something very different, that you took something that was a little too common and then just kind of did the opposite of that. And I think it works. I think this is really cool. I also like the fact that you're doing your photographic essays and you're commemorating and wrapping these up in book form. It's exactly what I was saying in the intro to this video, is that I think that's important. That's what separates us from somebody with a camera and to somebody who's really thinking about their work, who has something to say. There's a narrative, there's a sequence involved. And I think this is really wonderful. The only thing I would encourage you to do, and I know that this was kind of done in one day, it's almost perfect. I really love what you've done, what you're capturing visually. There's a couple images in here, like the discarded Coke can and the pigeon, that I think are not as strong as some of the others, but I think you've got some stuff that's really, really good in here. I think the rain in a lot of these images adds a great ambiance to it. And I love the way you handle layout. You avoid the gutter really well. It's just really nice. It's really well done. And the cover is very cool too. This material you used to do the wrap on the cover, it has a nod to the project. Anyway, man, this is awesome. And you guys should check out Carsten's work. Very cool. And I love that you're doing this. So keep it up, my man. And thank you for sharing. This is awesome. All right, so next up we've got a book called Dovetailing, Words and Pictures. This comes to us from Sandra Mohas. Sandra also includes a fairly long note. I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but she writes, "Dear Ted, this project started as a series of photographs taken in one room with one set of curtains and the wind during a wild summer storm. I noticed the animated movement, the shifting light, and I thought this is interesting. For me, getting my camera out was an attempt to get creative while holed up in an old Midwest B&B. I have worked primarily as a portrait photographer, and although the series of images are abstractions on a single subject, they could also be thought of as a portrait. The vintage room I was staying in had a palpable, almost haunted atmosphere charged with the energy of past honeymooners. I remember feeling frustratedly encapsulated with the glowing space. There was a personal relevance to the direction the wind was coming from, and the passion the storm was very symbolic as well. In truth, this book is kind of a love letter or an extension of correspondences between me and this guy from Iowa. Not so much a hodgepodge of images, but an attempt at intimacy, sharing an approach to editing that has to do with how things, and how people in this case, relate to one another. This series doesn't tell a story in a literal way, although it is autobiographical and universal, in expressing a yearning for spiritual and essential connection. I may be too close to the work, so it should be great to hear your feedback regarding how I put this together. P.S. One thing I know I would do differently is change the paper stock to something that holds the saturation but isn't so glossy. Thanks again, Ted, for your excellent show. You talk about making a difference with photography, and I think you do. Okay, Sandra, a lot to unpack here, and I want to thank you for being very vulnerable and very honest in your note, knowing that I would read this out loud, but I think it's a great concept. I love the fact of taking something that's very simple, like you were just basically staying in one room and decided to make a project out of it. I remember a couple years ago, I was supposed to do a workshop in Puerto Rico, and a friend of mine asked me to do with the local camera store here, and I went down there, and on day 2, I proceeded to get COVID, so I ended up spending my entire time in Puerto Rico in the hotel room, and I ended up just with my camera out of boredom taking a bunch of images, and I think it was real similar to what your direction was here. It really is amazing when you have extreme limits on yourself and you have this urge to do something that's creative, and it ends up being something that's very special. You don't have to travel far and wide to collect images all the time, and I love what you've done on here. The only thing I would say on here is I think your pacing is pretty good. The only thing that caught my eye that I would recommend you experiment with is I think the cover shot in this window is outstanding. And I remember getting here thinking outstanding, and I love the fact you're mixing it with other things. I think you got very drawn to the window, and we end up seeing it a lot. And you've got one spread in here. I will show you this spread here. We have no less than 3 of the same image of that window. Now, it's a strong composition, but I think when you have variations like this, it looks like you're kind of unsure of how you want it to be presented. And I will say this because I've done it, we've all done it. When you get a really strong image, it's really tempting to want to repeat that throughout the book, but I would not do it because it's going to lose the intended effect that you have, which is the strong composition. I would mess more with like where it's going to be placed in the book, how you get there. Maybe it's an arc in the overall narrative of the book, something like that, something to encourage the reader to keep looking on. But I like what you've done here. I like the mix of poetry in here. I think that's really well done. I also like the idea of taking like nostalgic type images, much like Peter's book earlier that we were looking at. It has this kind of memory context to it. Anyway, there's some things that you've done very well in here, and I love the concept of this. Now, I want to get to your other thing that you mentioned in here, and you've already kind of admitted to it, but with this type of paper, so this book is basically what we call a lay flat, and there are printing companies that offer this as an option. If you've watched my videos before, you know that I can't stand the lay flat. It's obnoxious for a number of reasons. But I want to give it some context. A lay flat is designed for, let's say somebody's doing commercial work, let's say you shoot weddings or something, and your client, or let's say the bride and the groom, want something that they can lay flat on a coffee table. That's what this is designed to do. The pages are extraordinarily heavy paperweights. The part that I don't like about it, other than the heavy paper, is that it is so glossy. Everything looks wet. And as you guys can see in here, and you probably saw in the B-roll, like it's picking up every reflection in this room. You've seen the monitor in it occasionally. It's too much, and that also has an effect on the viewer as they're looking at it. And there's something to be said for just going with traditional coated paper and having something that's just beautiful in that sense. I know that we all are used to looking at our images on a computer screen, and having this high gloss paper is going to retain that saturation. It's not as important as you probably think. I think the composition of the image, the lighting, those things are much more important. And so I would experiment with other options. The printer that you used on here is actually a good printer, but I would look at what else they have to offer other than these kind of big gimmicky lay flat books. But anyway, you have a wonderful idea. See if you can finish it another way and maybe mess with the sequencing just a little bit. But anyway, I love the idea. And Sandra, thank you for sharing. This is quite awesome. As I mentioned, I will link everyone in the show description below if you want to get a copy of their work, so please do. And I would love to know what you think. If you have any questions, drop them below. I will catch you in the next video. Until then, later.